Is it Albert on the line?
Yeah, this is Albert.
How you doing, Albert?
I'm doing fine, guys. How are y'all?
Good.
Pretty good.
Kind of a quick comment, or I guess a question. I'm not sure. Whatever. I was just watching the show. I always flip through this channel every once in a while, and I always stay on this channel for a little bit because there's a lot of great shows. But there's something that you were talking about earlier, like the morals and different things. I know Matt. You're talking about how if you're good to people, generally that's going to come back. I mean, not necessarily all the time, but generally it does. And I wanted to, that kind of made me think about something I was studying in philosophy when I was in actual college. Now I can't afford it. But anyway, I remember there was something that talking about Saul and how I think he changed his name to Paul after he saw a vision in the sky or something. Mm-hmm. And he was basically like the founder of what is modern Christianity or Catholicism, really. And
he's the guy,
or he made the hierarchy.
I certainly blame him for a good chunk of it.
Right, and I think that a lot of what has happened, at least I can only speak for Christianity because I used to be a Catholic. I was even confirmed and all that. But when what's funny is that the day I was confirmed, that was the day I started not believing, or I started questioning more because of, I don't know really why, I just started to, but almost like the gut feeling kind of thing, what you're talking about. And I think that, Jesus as a person, as a man, because I'm pretty sure he was alive, he was a man, he had a great idea of what we should do in the sense that, what you're talking about, be friends to people, love somebody, and they will love you back. Everybody will be, we can live like that. I mean, yes, you'll have bumps in the road and stuff. Anyway, I think that was lost in the whole interpretation of everything and the scope of it. And then I think maybe the elitist of the group of that time who knew science and who knew how to build, who knew about the mind, who knew about thought, they saw an opportunity to take advantage of that and saw a greater cause that they could actually, or an opportunity to promote their greater cause, whatever that is.
Let me jump in if you don't mind.
Yeah.
This idea of treat others as you'd like to be treated is something that's not unique to Christianity. It actually was in Confucius taught this 500 years before.
And it's in the Old Testament as well.
Yeah, so this is not a new idea, and to let you get back to your point, I think you're right that people do take these good ideas and sort of warp them into something for themselves, or warp them into something that helps their cause or their personal agendas.
Yeah, whether or not religion turns out to be useful seems to be far more important than whether or not it turns out to be true. And people, even those people who aren't necessarily trying to use or abuse religion, will still make those same types of comments about whether or not it's beneficial or useful to them. You're not at all alone in thinking that Paul, Saul, the early church, the founders at the beginning of religion basically twisted or morphed what Christianity originally was. I don't know that I necessarily buy that. I certainly think that there was some twisting and changing going on. I don't know that I necessarily buy that it was morphed nearly so much as some people might assert. But the other thing is that I don't consider, and I kind of hem and haw when I say this because I know there's some Christians out there who are just going to lose their mind the second I say it. I don't particularly find the message of Jesus original, inspiring, morally correct, or even much good advice. We've talked about this before. I did a deconstruction of the Sermon on the Mount. If you go to www.ironchariots.org, that is the wiki that
Russell... Iron Chariots?
Yeah, ironchariots.org. It's right there at the bottom of the screen. If you can see it, ironchariots.org. And do a search in the little box there for Sermon on the Mount. You'll get a verse-by-verse lookup at the Sermon on the Mount where I point out the things, and this is something that I think anybody should do. And anybody who objects to this, you really need to take a moment to think about why. Because what I've done is I've gone through the verses for what is supposed to be, according to many Christians, the greatest, most inspiring, most perfect speech ever given, and pointed out which bits are good advice, which bits are bad advice, which bits are morally questionable, if not outright immoral in my view, and how, despite the morphing of this doctrine from this vengeful, wrathful God of the Old Testament to the cheek-turning God of the New Testament.
Right.
Jesus seems to violate many of his own ideas, right down to chasing the money changers out of the temple. He didn't just get mad and do it spur of the moment. He got pissed, left the temple, manually made himself a scourge. I mean, that's the way the Bible describes it. He left and made a scourge, not just picked a scourge up that was laying around. That means he got a stick and a bunch of bits of leather and some broken shards and stuff, and constructed a weapon, and then went in and screaming and yelling to chase him out. Now while this may be, and apologists will say, well, that's just. Those money changers shouldn't have been there. I think there's some Jewish scholars that disagree with you because of the requirements for paying your sacrifices and things. The fact of the matter is, this is not the action of a rational, turn the other cheek person. This is irrational. And it's irrationally taken to an extent where it's become a premeditated, justified act that I don't see as justified. I think if that's the best that the wisest man, creator, God thing of the universe, if that's the best solution he could come up to was to chase somebody around with a scourge, I'm unimpressed. Sorry.
Right. Well, I mean, once again, I mean, also the actual Gospels are actually written, I think, 100,000 years after the fact, or not 1,000, but, a few hundred years after he was dead. So
the earliest ones were written several decades after he supposedly lived.
Oh, okay, several decades. Okay, well, I mean, I
Even
think that
Paul's
maybe
writings.
there was something. I mean, I'm not saying that that's not true or anything. I agree with you on that. Definitely, that is irrational. That isn't the turn the cheek kind of thing or whatever. But as far as it being, even if it was true, I mean, like I said, Jesus was a man. He was just a guy. He was anything special, or I don't think he could heal people. So I think that was added in as kind of like a Hollywood kind of, the Hollywood kind of view
very,
of it.
very common
Get
at that
somebody
time.
interested into the idea.
Yeah, and actually, just to kind of interrupt on one point, I may have made this in the deconstruction. It's a very simple and oversimplified worldview. Even this idea that is lauded across Christianity, turn the other cheek. Somebody wrongs you, turn the other cheek.
Yeah.
That can be good advice. Showing somebody that you're not going to be affected by their wrongs, that you're going to remain positive and still care about them, can change other people. However, that same strategy is what keeps some people in abusive relationships.
Right.
How often do you turn the other cheek? 7 times 70, as the New Testament would have you believe? There are times when it's a bad strategy. And to oversimplify things, it's one thing to have kind of rules of thumbs and guidelines for ethics and generalizations.
Well, even in Islam, I mean, Muhammad was talking about how that's why he was a little bit different, and I think that's why maybe that one's a little bit more prevalent now because, at least Islam is, because it does teach that you need to protect yourself and defend yourself, which is why the extremists have taken that part of it and taken that blown out of proportion, saying they need to defend everything there.
Definitely.
But that part of Islam was actually a little bit different from Jesus, and said, he turned the cheek, which he did agree. But if someone's going to hurt you and kill you and keep you from
let's put a rational limit on it. Because what Christianity does is Christianity.
That's kind of an idea that I think I can relate to. I'm not saying I'm Muslim either, or anything like that. I'm just saying I think the problem is that exactly what you just said. Everything is oversimplified.
Christianity promotes the idea of not only making people victims, but making them joyous about being victims. Right. The idea that you are so close to God that the devil is going to persecute you and make your life miserable means every miserable moment becomes a testimony to how good you're doing. So you should rejoice in being this victim, which is why they can cry victim all the time. It's absurd. And while Islam has a number of problems, I think it's very telling that there are some improvements on a religion that shows up 700 years later. I'd like to think we learned something in those 700 years.
Yeah, me too.
We just didn't learn enough.
And as far as like giving money as well, I know you were talking about that as well. And I don't have a problem with people giving donations because I think churches have to live. I mean, they have to live too, just like what you're talking about, the superhero donations, or if you had a special ability, you would take donations because you need to live too. I just think like what you are talking about, that it is.
First, show me the special
ability. It's gone out of
ability,
control.
though.
I mean, I can flip. a day and flip through channels, and there are tons of people that are, give me money, and you'll get it back, whatever. I mean, it doesn't have, they know that it's not going to happen, but then they believe that it does. That's the difference.
Yeah.
I guess knowing and believing are two different things,
Well, Albert, we appreciate the call. We got another couple calls waiting,
That's cool.
and Don's got to get some points, but we're glad you called in. And as a reminder, anybody who'd like to join us after the show, we're on for another 30 minutes or so, and then we go to dinner at Threadgill's on Riverside. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to join any of our events. You don't have to be a member to attend. And with regard to membership, there have been a lot of questions coming in about, how do I become a member? Can I be a member if I'm not in the Austin area? Information like that's available at the website. You can also email info@atheist-community.org and get answers on that. But I think most of it's covered pretty well on the website.
Yeah. Let me do a postmortem on that call. He brought up the topic of embellishments early in Christianity. If people have some time, go to one of the search engines on the internet and look up pious fraud, put in those words, and you'll find all sorts of interesting information about all of the embellishments and all the things that they added in early Christianity. The thinking at that time was, tell as many lies as you can and grow this thing. And that is really the foundation. That was the foundation of Christianity, and that's how it grew, is through this pious fraud. And all of those lies became sort of ossified in the dogma of the religion over time. And that's,
The biggest lie is pretending to have answers when you don't have any.
Sure.
That it's so. I realize it's disturbing to say I don't know. I'm not completely comfortable with it. I'm probably more comfortable than some of the callers, but no matter how disturbing it is to say I don't know, there's not that alone is not a justification to pretend that you do know, or to accept an answer that you would otherwise reject because there's not evidence to support it. I just don't get that. By the way, I'll save that. I had a scamlet.